So one of the goals for this year is to try every viable option to relocating to Canada. Of course, the legitimate ones. And one of these options is the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. You may have heard of it, or you may not have heard of it. Some people have heard of it and have not just tried it. Guys, this is the year that you should try everything. If you want to know more about this program, please stay tuned. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. So what is this program all about? It is one of the programs that the government of Canada has set aside for people who want to work and reside in Canada for a temporary period. Now, I'm putting temporary period in quotes because from the temporary period, you can always get your PR from there. But I'll talk about that in the course of the video. Now, what does it really entail? Obviously, you need to get a work permit to come and work in Canada for a particular employer. Now, let's go through the requirements of the program. Now, the first requirement is that you need to get a job in Canada. Like I always say, this is not the point where you run off. This program is actually very legit, and a lot of people have relocated to Canada via this route. So the next requirement is that obviously the company or the employer has to have done their LMIA. Now, the LMIA is the Labor Market Impact Assessment. It is really the employer telling the government that, hey, I want to bring in a foreign worker because I wasn't able to get somebody to fill this role in Canada. Now, it might sound very complex, but actually it's not like it's too complex, and a lot of employers already have their LMIA or are in the process of getting it. And even when those that don't even have any of the two, once you get the job, they can apply for it. So like I said, one of the requirements is that your employer must already have done their LMIA and should be able to provide you with that documentation. And of course, you need to be able to work for that employer for the duration of your work permit. And then you need to, once you have your employment offer, and then your employer provides you with their LMIA documentation, then you can now apply for a work permit. It's really straightforward. You apply for your work permit. There's a lot of documentations that you will need to submit in order to apply for your work permit. Your passport photos, the valid job offer, your police record certificates, your resume. There are quite a number of them. So what I'll do, then what else do you need to do? You need to complete a medical examination. If you don't complete the medical examination, you might be restricted to certain jobs. Maybe you might not be allowed to work with children or in the healthcare sector because those sectors are very particular about the kind of employees that they take on. You just need to go there and say, okay, you want to apply for a work permit, so you need to do your medical examination. They already know the kind of tests that are required. So it's not like you need to go and look up anything. So make sure you get that medical examination done. So once you have submitted all the necessary documents for your visa application, that is when the wait kind of starts. It depends. There's a processing time of, some will say 3 weeks to 27 weeks. So it really all depends on how fast it comes. But don't worry, the point is, at least you've submitted your documentation, and then you just have to wait. For the most part, when you get a job in Canada, most times, you would typically get your visa. Now, the visa really is for a 6-month period. But the good news is, once you have your work, they'll give you a 6 month, you can work for 6 months, but you can always renew it for, at least for another 4 years. I know people that I work with currently who have been on a work visa or work permit for this long, right? So that is the good part about it. So even though the initial one might just be for 6 months, you have the option of renewing it. So now let's get into the part that, that is very interesting to you and I, which is how can I stay in Canada permanently? Once you have your work permit and you start to work for that employer, mind you, with the temporary foreign worker program, The employer that gives you the employment obviously is the employer that you have to stick with for the duration of that period, say the 6 months, or if you have to renew, as the case may be, or if you get another employment, then maybe you can file under that new employer. But my point is, once you get your work permit and you're already in Canada working, then you can now apply for other pathways to relocating to Canada. You can now apply for the express entry programs or all of those provincial nominations that are available to people. The government, at least in recent times, the focus is now on converting the temporary people on temporary permits to like permanent permits. And that is the category that you will fall under once you are already in Canada working. So that is the good news about this program. It's not just, even though when you hear the term temporary foreign worker, you feel like, oh, it means that I need to go back to my country immediately afterwards. Well, that will only happen if you have renewed for like 4 years and you still have not been able to secure your PR. But oftentimes within that 4-year period, people are able to secure their PR via these other routes that I just mentioned. And the good part as well is that your CRS score is definitely going to be higher than the average person who is applying, because you are going to be accumulating points for having a job in Canada, which is like a big deal. Anybody who knows and has been trying to increase their CRS score, we know that that is like a big jump. So you are almost guaranteed, getting programs like the express entry, and then try and do other things, provincial nominations. There's so many. It doesn't have to necessarily be the province that you are currently working in as a temporary foreign worker. You can look elsewhere. So really, once you get the job and once you start this program, you just have to like spread your wings. Spread your wings, apply everywhere and fly, because that is really what you need to do. That is the pathway that is how you can stay in Canada. What some people do is that they come in through a visitor's visa. They come in through a visitor's visa, they come and they physically start to, survey the environment and start to look for a job. Obviously, you cannot work in Canada with a visitor's visa. But the point is, during that period that you are visiting, you can physically go to some of these employers and then you can apply physically. When you apply, once they give you the job, of course, you need to go back to your country and apply for your work permit from there. But the point is, at least it's an extra step. If you can afford coming here for like a holiday visit, just try that out, because I've heard that some people do that. So like I said, you won't be able to work, but at least you'll be able to physically go to these offices and apply, drop your resume. It's easier when they see you and they're like, okay, this is someone who is probably ready. And then once you qualify and you pass through all the interviews and all of that, then you get your offer and then you can apply for a visa to come in. So that is one of the things that I think that you should try out. In terms of the fees, and I'm hoping that this is up to date, but I think that just budget an application fee of about 160 Canadian dollars, thereabouts. And then if you are asked to do to provide your biometrics information, then it means that you now have to pay an extra fee of about 85 Canadian dollars. So altogether, you're probably just, maybe just put like $300 Canadian dollars down, which it's probably not up to, but just put that down as, the budget for this application process. So one of the questions that I know people are going to ask me, what happens to my family if I am not single? Can I come along with them? So I'm just going to answer that now. The answer is yes. So what you need to do is, as the primary applicant, you need to make sure that when you're applying for your work permit, you submit documentation for your spouse and your other dependents. So most times it's usually your spouse or partner of common law, and then your dependents, which are like your children. So you need to make sure that you submit all of their documentation. That way they can come along with you, when you are now approved to travel. And the good news is your partner can also apply for a work permit for them to be able to work in Canada. So at least it's not just one person's income that is sustaining the family. There's also someone else who is able to work. But make sure that, or just know that as a spouse, you are technically a dependent of the principal applicant. So if the principal applicant's work permit is expired, it means that you also cannot continue to work in Canada. So just make sure that you have that all sorted. So yeah, this is really what the temporary foreign worker program is all about. Like I said, you may have heard about it, or you may not have heard about it at all. But the truth is, some of these things are out there. And I just feel like most people are so focused on like the express entry, the provincial nominations, which really, those are the popular ones that you hear. But I feel like when you're trying to relocate, you need to try every option. Like emphasis on legitimate option. You need to try every legitimate option to relocating to Canada. And as always, don't go with the general mindset. The fact that you don't hear so much about it doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily work. People have applied for this. They have come through a work permit. At least I work in an organization where there are so many people on work permits. When it expires, they have to renew, and almost always they get their renewals. Okay, so just make sure that please try out this pathway, try out this program. You never know what will happen. So guys, that is really it for this video. If you like this video, you know what to do. Hit the like button, and you know how we roll. I'll see you.